Wow, well what a view. New York City skyline and a beautiful BMW 530i X-Drive. That's my rental car for this weekend. I'm going to drive around New York City and some other hot spots and making our way around the surrounding area just to check it all out. So join me along as I drive around New York. So I've been driving around the New York City, New Jersey, Connecticut area, and this is the first time I've been driving here actually. First time in New York actually. So driving in the Northeast is very different from what I'm used to driving in Florida. But coming from Amsterdam and coming here, driving again in North America always takes a little bit of an adjustment for me. You know, getting back used to the lack of lane discipline and other just lackadaisical driving behavior. What's an additional complexity driving here, which you may have just seen, is a lot of potholes. So of course in the Northeast, they get a lot of snow. And when there's snow, it basically leads to a lot of potholes. So one of the adjustments of coming back here and driving is actually avoiding the potholes as I've been driving around. So I'm making my way back to Manhattan right now. Yes, I'm actually going to be driving this car in Manhattan. I did a little bit yesterday. Today's Sunday, yesterday was Saturday, so it's a little bit less crazy on the weekend. Of course, for the average North American driver, driving in New York City is absolutely crazy. And even as I was walking around as a pedestrian this week, it is a bit crazy. It's very different than any other city, but having driven in many European cities, actually the roads are still quite wide and accommodating for cars, and cars still kind of rule Manhattan. So of course you have to watch out for pedestrians and cyclists just like anywhere else. But I've seen a lot of cars honk at pedestrians because when they have a green light and pedestrians are crossing, you know, they don't want to disturb the car traffic. So it's still very much a car-oriented city. So don't be too surprised that it's actually possible to drive around Manhattan. There's also many parking garages. You'll just pay a lot. But parking in the city, especially on the street, can be quite tight. And I've seen a lot of vehicles here with these bumper guards. It's to protect your car from other drivers when you're parking in the city that may bump against you, because kind of like parking in Paris, every centimeter, every inch matters. And people use that here, and sometimes it causes damage to other vehicles. So people tend to put bumper guards around the front or rear of their vehicle, especially if they street park in New York City. The main thing for me about driving in New York City is not that it's impossible, it's doable. You have to pay a lot of attention to things, just like I've done as I've driven in many other European cities, where you have the craziness of the busyness of the city and the complexity of tiny, narrow, winding streets. At least in New York, you have a lot of wider streets, so it's a little bit easier for someone like me to drive, but I still don't think it's very easy for the average driver, and that's what adds to the complexity of driving in a place like New York City. Big cities in North America have the same drivers who also don't know the rules or don't follow the rules very well on the other outskirt streets. You now bring those sort of bad driving habits into a city which is very dense and compact and intense, and it's a lot for the average driver. Let's see how it is when I get there. Of course, again, it's a Sunday, but I'm actually navigating now to the Red Ball Garage, which is the starting point of the Cannonball Run. If you're not familiar with the Cannonball Run, it's an east to west coast sprint for the fastest time. Many records have been set on YouTube, but it starts at the Red Ball Garage in New York City. So I'm gonna drive there and see if I can check it out. As I enter Manhattan, I will be sure to cover some interesting things as we go driving through Manhattan. Something interesting I've noticed about driving in the Northeast is the concept of parkways. So this is something I've seen in New York and in Connecticut. Maybe it also exists in some of the other Northeastern states. But they're essentially highways only for passenger cars. There's a height restriction, no trucks are allowed. They have lower bridges, actually beautiful lower bridges, and it ensures that only passenger vehicles, including pickup trucks and large SUVs, but basically private vehicles, not commercial vehicles, use the parkways. So I drove on a couple, and it was really cool actually. Maybe, you know, it seems to flow a little bit better. You don't have a lot of larger vehicles clogging up the road. And it was really kind of beautiful, scenic driving through these parkways. And it's actually the law that commercial vehicles and overheight vehicles can't drive on those roads. So that was really cool and really interesting. I love to see the concept. So as I'm driving now, currently in the kind of Washington Heights, Upper Manhattan area right now on Broadway. One thing noteworthy that I wanted to call out is the amount of double parking you see as you're driving through here and even as you continue down. So it's street parking on one side and then someone on the other side of the car kind of double parked, usually temporarily there. You can see an example coming up here. So what you kind of have to do as you're driving along is this dance between being in that lane and then moving over to the left lane when there's someone double parked. And then sometimes there's someone, you know, turning left, which is holding up the left lane, which backs that up. So you kind of have to do this kind of, you know, weaving in and out a little bit. So you can see them coming up here. You kind of got to go around on the left side. And then if someone was turning left here, they'd block you know, the street here. So it's kind of this little dance you have to do as you drive around is what I've realized. I'm driving alongside the iconic Central Park right now, and once you're here you realize how massive Central Park is and how many blocks it actually takes up. New York City has implemented a 25-mile-per-hour citywide speed limit, so as I've been driving around here, it actually hasn't been too chaotic or crazy because most people are adhering to that 25-mile-per-hour limit, and I know it's being enforced with cameras and other sorts of technology to ensure that people follow that. 25 miles per hour is right around 40 kilometers per hour, so it's not bad for a city speed limit. New York City, and Manhattan specifically, is one of those iconic places to drive. Like, I know that sounds a bit crazy, but there are a few places as a driver that you want to drive through. One of them is the Las Vegas Strip, which I got to do a couple of years ago, so check that video out if you haven't seen it. But the other one is Manhattan, in just various parts of Manhattan. As crazy and chaotic as it is, it's an experience, it's a driving experience, and that's all what I'm here for. Now, with that being said, the City of New York is working on implementing congestion charging for Lower Manhattan. That is, Midtown down. If you were to enter that area, you would have to pay a $15 charge to enter that area. And this is similar to what London has implemented with congestion charging. So the reality is there are probably too many vehicles in the Manhattan area, and they're trying to discourage private use of vehicles, similar to what London is trying to do. So I understand that, especially as vehicles have gotten bigger, you still see large trucks, SUVs here within New York City, and something has to give. There's a limited amount of space and resources, and there has to be a system to discourage people from driving. But this is very, very controversial, especially as cars are still, even in this part of the country, a dependency and a key thing for business owners and for people to get work done or people to get to work. So this congestion charging for New York City, Lower Manhattan, is quite controversial. Let me know what you think in the comments below. All right, I'm apparently at some roundabout, but continuing to go down Broadway. The next sort of iconic spot that I want to drive through, which I know is going to be a little bit crazy, is Times Square. Of course, it's another one of those sort of iconic spots to drive through. But now we're really kind of getting into the thick of it. You see the tall buildings, West 58th here, and yeah, it's a sight to see for sure. Very different from the car's perspective now versus pedestrian. Alright, so we're almost to iconic Times Square. Now it's closed for vehicles through, so we have to kind of go around and go down, I think, on 7th. So that's what we're going to do now. But, I mean, you can already see the the chaos that is Times Square. Of course, you gotta watch out for the pedestrians and then kind of go. But I mean, look at that. I thought the Las Vegas Strip was cool, but man, this is a scene. The thing is, there's always so many different things to pay attention to, but you see how wide the streets are. This is what I was saying, 3 lanes plus parking, very car oriented. So even with a lot going on, pedestrians, cyclists, buses, you know, it's easy. It's easier than some European cities, to be honest. What's this guy doing? Let's take your time, pay attention to your surroundings, and look at this, driving through the heart of Times Square. Try not to get stuck in this light. There we go. Right up through. So we're on 7th Avenue right now. I guess it crosses back over with Broadway. Not sure. It kind of blows my mind that this isn't fully pedestrianized by now with all of the people coming to this area. I mean, I know it mostly is in some parts, but the fact that cars are still able to drive through and still have a huge space dedicated to cars, that's pretty surprising to me. So I think I'm going to end the video there. Hope you enjoyed kind of seeing the New York City area and Manhattan through a different perspective, through a car perspective. I would not recommend driving here if you really don't have to. I understand for some people like myself it's a bucket list item, so just know what you're getting into. Of course, I'm doing it on a weekend, which is much less busy than a weekday. So just know what you're getting into. Manhattan is not an ideal place for cars, and it's very expensive to park here as well. But it is a cool experience. I'm really glad I did it. Hope you enjoyed it, and until the next time, thanks so much for watching. Kind of blows my mind that this isn't fully. And that's the bus coming through.
What is going on here? It's like they're racing.